Now if you look at problem 271, it's a question related to M mode. As I explained in the previous lecture, questions about M mode are always included on the test, so make sure to organize your notes well. The key information you can get here includes things like time and the results according to motion amplitude. The correct answer is choice A. If you look at the choices, option D might be a bit confusing, but since frequency is not related, you should focus on the amplitude in option A. Next, let's move on and look at problem 272. From here, the questions are related to A mode. Let's review A mode once again. As you can see, you evaluate it based on the height. There are two types of information you can obtain. First, information related to amplitude like this, and second, information about distance. Please remember this along with the diagram shown here. Now, based on this content, let's try solving a problem. Looking at question 272, it asks how the strength magnitude is represented in A mode. The correct answer is to choose number 2. Through the height of the spike, you can say that the higher the spike, the greater the amplitude, and the lower it is, the smaller the value. Let's look at question 273 right below. The question is asking what kind of information can be obtained through A mode. As I just explained, A mode is characterized by providing information based on height differences, that is, information related to amplitude, as well as information about distance. Continuing right away, question 274 is again about M mode. It is asking which examination part is most commonly displayed using M mode. As you can tell from the name, it is suitable for examining organs that are involved in movement. The correct answer is C, the heart. Next, let's move on to question 275. This question is also asking which part is most commonly examined using A mode. When I explained the characteristics of A mode, I mentioned things like height differences and also added that it is related to the keyword orbit, which refers to the eye. Therefore, in the case of A mode, it is used when conducting examinations related to the eye, as in this question. Next, let's move on to question 276. This type of question is one of the patterns that always appears when asking about A mode. This question asks what kind of response appears in the internal contents when there is a simple cyst during an A mode examination. I'll explain this while looking at the commentary. If you look at the commentary in the textbook, it explains that in A mode display, the amplitude here is evaluated based on the height. However, it states that there is no signal. Specifically, it explains that within the internal contents of a simple cyst, no signal appears. The reason is the same. The basic characteristic of ultrasound is to display the signals that are sent out and then return. But inside a cyst, there is almost no reflection, so these do not appear as amplitude changes. The important term here is internal contents. Inside a cyst, since it is filled with fluid, you can say that these spikes do not appear, but on the other hand, there must be some kind of content present in the wall area of the cyst. It is explained that strong reflections can occur at this wall area. To summarize once again, the result can vary depending on which part you are being asked about. Since the question asked about the internal contents, the correct answer would be that there is no signal at all. If the question had asked about the wall components of the cyst, then the correct answer would be that there are spikes. Returning to the question, you should select answer D as the correct choice. For the internal contents, you can consider that no spikes appear at all. Let's move on and look at the next question. Questions 277 and 278 are not particularly important. Since these are rather old methods, we'll just check the correct answers for reference and move on. This method is not currently in use. Now the question is asking about the advantages of a water path transducer. The advantage of the transducer here is that it is characterized by a reduction in multiple reflections occurring in the near field. You just need to check the correct answer. Similarly, this question is asking about the disadvantages of a water path scanner. The disadvantage of the scanner here is that air bubbles can form inside the fluid, which interferes with transmission. To summarize once again, the advantage is that it reduces multiple reflections occurring in the near field. As a disadvantage, you can consider that these bubbles form and interfere with transmission. Just keep in mind that this is something to be aware of as a reference. Next, let's move on and look at question number 279. This question requires a bit of interpretation. This question asks what advantages there are to operating the elements in groups when using a linear transducer compared to operating them individually or separately. You can think of this as a question asking about the advantages of using only a specific part in the linear method versus using a certain group to cover a slightly wider range. The correct answer is to choose option B. When operating as an element group, you achieve a wider aperture, which increases the lateral resolution. To summarize this part again, the narrower this size is, the faster the focusing occurs. Focusing occurs over a short distance and spreads out widely, so you can consider the focused region to be relatively short. On the other hand, if you use elements in various groups, you can apply the range to a wider area. In this way, you can focus on deeper areas, and during this process, the lateral resolution in this region can be increased. To summarize again, the range of use for the elements here is related to the aperture as shown here. A narrow aperture results in a shorter focal length, while a wide aperture allows focusing at greater depths, which in turn affects the lateral resolution. Just keep that in mind. Next, let's move on and look at question number 280. Yes, since this type of question is a pattern we've solved many times in previous lectures, let's go straight to finding the answer. It says that both the image depth and the scanline density have been increased. When this happens, the depth increases and there are more tasks to be performed. As a result, there may be a decrease in temporal resolution. So you should choose option B.